In this video, we're going to learn how to solve equations with variables. So how is this different from the last video you should have watched? In the last video, you had all numbers and then one variable you solved for. Today, we're going to replace some of those numbers with variables. The operations are exactly the same, but it just requires a little more critical thinking of how you're going to actually solve these equations. So your objective is that you can rearrange an equation for a given variable. Right, to solve an equation, remember from the last video, you need to use inverse operations. So those inverse operations, you have adding and subtracting, undo each other. We have multiplying and dividing are inverses of each other. And then the one we're not using in this video, but we will use in the future, is anytime you square something and then you take the square root of that, those are also inverses of each other. Lastly, when we're solving equations, we want to isolate the variable. So if my variable is x, we want x equals. Or you can think of it that you want the variable on one side. So we're going to do 6 examples. And your first example is right here. So this is solve for the indicated variable. And then with each problem, I'm going to tell you what variable that is. So here I tell you need to solve for c. And just like we did with the other equations, you can draw your line to show your two sides to help you keep you neat and organized. And then you want to leave the variable you're solving for alone on one of the two sides. So here I'm solving for c. I want c to stay on this side, and d needs to be kicked to the other side, needs to be moved using our inverse operations. So next thing you need to kind of think about is what operation is between d and c. Well, that operation is addition. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract d from both sides. Well, d minus d is 0, so they simplify out or cancel. So I'm left with just c, and then I have a minus d. One thing I want to point out sometimes in math is that you can write it different and still be correct. That's one of the beauties in math. There can be multiple representations of the answer. So C can also be written. We can switch these two around. The minus sign goes with D, so it's negative D. And then A is positive plus A. These two are the exact same answer. So on B, now I'm solving for M. I'm going to draw my line so I know my two sides. M needs to be alone on the left side, and P needs to move to the other side. So again, you need to think to yourself, what operation is in between M and P? Well, anytime two things are next to each other, that indicates multiplication. Opposite of multiplication, that is division. So since I am moving P, I need to divide by P. Again, what you do to one side, we need to do to the other. The p's simplify to 1 or cancel out. So I have 1m or m equals k or divided by p. There is one other way you could write this and still be correct. M, you can say k, and anytime you're dividing, it's like a fraction times 1 over p. Normally you will see it like this. We like to make things one fraction and put it all together, but there's nothing wrong with the answer down below. So on C I added not just one variable, now we have 2 on the side that I have to move everything. So I'm going to draw my line for my two sides. It says I am solving for x, so let me draw a box around x to show that that one needs to stay and the m and the b need to be kicked out. Now, this is the point where students tend to struggle thinking of who needs to move first. Do I move the m first or do I move the b first? And sometimes, to help students, I write, instead of using m and b, I put numbers there. So if I just had y equals 3x plus 4, and I said, okay, solve for x, move everything to the other side. Students can do this because like, oh, you move 4 first. So you get y minus 4, or if you had a number here, you subtract 4. It goes 3x. and then you divide by 3. Same concepts here. The 4 is the b, so I'm going to move the b first. It's plus b, so the opposite of adding b is minus b. So I have y minus b equals mx. So now I need to move m, operation between m and x. Again, you always need to think, what operation is in between? I'm going to do the opposite. The operation is multiplication. So I'm going to divide by m to both sides. So I have x equals y minus b over m. Lastly, again, I just want to give you multiple ways of writing your answer. This is correct. I absolutely will accept that. One other way I will accept your answer is divide. Notice m is dividing both y and b. I can go y over m minus b over m equals x. That answer is also correct. In our fourth example, now I'm solving for B2 and I have a lot more going on and just kind of add into the difficulty. So I am solving for B2, so the 1/2, the B1, and the H need to move. So look at what we have here, what operations. I have 1/2 times, so I'm going to put a multiplication symbol between B1 plus B2 times H. So I need to move the 1/2 and I need to move the H. It doesn't matter which one you move first, and you're still going to get the same answer or a similar answer, just rearranged just like we did here. So let's move, since the 1/2 is in front, let's move that first. So 1/2, remember when you want to move a fraction, we want to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1 or 2. So I multiply this side by 2. I don't need the 2 over 1 because it's just 2. So I have 2a equals, these cancel. I still have my parentheses, b1 plus b2 times h. Now I need to move the h, multiplications in between, so I'm going to divide by h. 2a over h equals, and then I have b1 plus b2. Alright, so lastly, I need to move the b1 because I want to leave b2 alone. Adding is in between, so I'm going to subtract by b1. So I have 2a over h minus b1, so 1 here, equals b2. And again, there's other variations that you could have did. You could have distributed first with everything and then moved everything, which would give you just a little bit different answer, but it would still be the same thing. You can move the h first and then the 1/2. You can actually move the 1/2 and the h at the exact same time. The one thing you can't do is just subtract by b1 right away because it's kind of locked in the parentheses. So again, there's like 3 or 4 different ways you could have solved this problem. So E, our last 2 examples, I want to solve for B. So let's take a look at what we have on this problem. We have 1/4 times, this little symbol right here is pi, which is 3.14159 and so on, times B times H. So what I'm going to do this all in kind of one step. Since these are all multiplication, I need to divide by everything I don't want. I don't want the 1/4, so I'm going to divide by 1/4. I don't want pi, so pi divided by pi simplifies it. Opposite of multiplying by h is dividing by h. And then I have to balance my equation. So I'm going to do that to the other side. So I have y divided by 1/4 pi over h equals b. Now taking a look, one of the big math no-nos, there's several of them, but one of the biggest ones is that you cannot have a fraction in the denominator. It is considered improper in the math world. So right here we need to move the 1/4 or get a fraction on the denominator. So back when you learn about fractions, you learn to, when you divide by a fraction, you flip and multiply. So I'm going to take the fraction, I'm going to take 1/4, I'm going to flip it, so it's now 4/1, or 4, and then I'm going to multiply. So instead of having 1/4, it's the same thing as multiplying by 4. Well, this is 4/1, so the 4 goes with the y on top, so that's 4y and pi h equals b. That is the correct answer. Again, there's a little other variations that you could write it, except you cannot leave the fraction in the denominator. So F is our last one. Still stuck on the last problem. And I want to solve for y. Well, really, this is one step. I just need to get the 5 out of here. So I'm going to subtract by 5. So I have y equals 4/5 x minus 9 minus 5. And you can be done there, or if you want to kind of practice simplifying a little more, you could do a couple other things. We can get rid of the parentheses, because normally when we see solutions, sometimes we don't have parentheses in there. You can distribute your 4/5, and then 4/5 times 9, that is 4 times 9, which is 36, or 5, or 7 1/5. Minus 5, then you can put these two together, or you can think again, this is 7 1/5. So adding those two together, y equals 4/5 x minus 12 1/5. So that is it for this video. Again, students tend to struggle with this section just because it's a little more abstract than what they're used to. But remember, it is just like solving equations, but they're not any or barely any numbers in there. And then you want to isolate the variables using inverse operations. Really think to yourself, what are those variables doing? And then how can I do the opposite of it? Reminder to do your reflection so you get credit for watching this video.